Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Professor Drew's Lab. You guys have a couple more questions today. A lot of them function mostly around how certain mechanics interact with others, and how we handle certain things from the games, how we bring them in. So I'm going to try my best to explain those as thoroughly and helpfully as I can, but let's get right on into it. This name is taken. I'm not sure if this question has been asked or not, but I was curious. Was there any way the party could have stopped Mr. Mime from killing Mortar? It seemed their attempt to take him out before he pulled the trigger was what caused him to fire before the countdown was over, or was it just inevitable? Oh yes, there were many ways to interact with Mr. Mime and the abilities that he has, and the things that he wanted to do and could do and did. There were a lot of times where I think it's the most obvious where it's Phoebe's turns. If you pay close attention to Phoebe during that fight, she is trying a lot of things that are working very well. That fight was designed to challenge the players, not necessarily their characters, but there were a lot of ways to stop Mr. Mime from doing anything. They just didn't quite get there. They went for the brute force approach, which can work, but in that very specific circumstance, pun intended, kind of backfired on them. But let's move on down. Matthew Turner wants to know, what are some examples of the best or most powerful equipment and boosts money can buy for a Pokemon in your world? Is there anything ludicrously powerful that someone like the Collector, the Champion, or the Director of Team Rocket could just bulldoze even a gym leader with? Or does the power of money and connections cap out at just feeding your Pokemon as many rare candies as possible until some arbitrary limit is reached and using TMs to teach them the best possible moves? So I'm glad you asked, because this will address kind of a lot of how the setting works for the TOTS. We've seen, if memory serves, and sometimes it doesn't, I believe they've seen 2 rare candies in the sort of like 4 years that we've been running with the TOTS. Rare candies are certainly not the like end-all be-all of training. Source stones are probably the closest thing to that, but even those aren't necessarily like a level 1 to 100 kind of deal. They're sort of like a 3 to 5 level boost, and then that element gets sort of amplified in you over time. But it really depends on what your exposure to it is. We've seen like Chicky Baby and Sage be near the grass source stone and they got a little bit more powerful. We've seen Crash have it literally embedded in his back, and he is much more powerful now. So the source stones are probably the closest thing. Now that being said, the Champion or the Director of Team Rocket, to put it in those perspectives, probably wouldn't need any help. They would probably be able to, obviously the Champion has bulldozed the gym leaders in the past. The Director of Team Rocket doesn't function, I think, in the way that he probably would have in like a Giovanni sense. The Director of Team Rocket for the TOTS setting is a much more human-focused individual. He doesn't rely on anyone else to get things done if he needs something to happen. But maybe we'll get into that a little bit more if we get to the chance to kind of dive into the nitty-gritty of CJ's backstory, but maybe we'll take a look at that. But TMs do exist in the world. I should say they did. I had rules for them in the beginning, and we'll probably bring them back in like a future game if we do something like that. But the way TMs were gonna work was not as cool or as engaging for me or the players as the rites of learning were. To say, okay, you tell me the move you want to learn, rather than, okay, you found a disc with a move on it and I have to explain why it explodes when you teach it to your Pokemon. So TMs we kind of scrapped very quick, just because it felt like either a shortcut or a sort of a cutoff of creativity, you know? It kind of like, it closed the valve a little bit too much. So I got rid of those because the players were having fun. But you would also like to know, how do the infamous one-hit KO moves function in your world, in and out of gyms and official competition, and are there any regulations involving their usage? So let me explain how I've run them. Obviously this is by no means like the way that you should do it. This is just the way that we've done it, because nobody in the TOTS has run up against one of these things before. And I don't know that they ever will, because again, it kind of just takes all the nuance out of stuff. As soon as you give somebody a chance to one-shot any opponent, you lose the intrigue of a fight. But the way we handle the Oko moves is you have to roll a natural 20. You cannot have, gain, or be given a bonus to hit or advantage if you use them. It is always a flat roll. You have a 5% chance that it works. You have to crit, and if you don't, the attack does nothing. So you could use this in any sanctioned fight, because there's a 95% chance that you do nothing. And the math is probably wrong there, but again, math is tricky for me. But yeah, basically you have a 1 in 20 shot that it's gonna work. So if it doesn't, and you get knocked down because you spend 5 rounds trying to go for this thing and you don't ever actually attack, I would be worried that the players would either feel like it's too good to use, so they would never try, or the opposite, that they would say it's too good not to use, and that would be the only thing they would ever do. So the players will probably never run into one of these on their side, and I doubt I'll ever use one against them, because what's the point if I'm behind a screen rolling for 1 attack a turn anyway? A 1-hit kill move with a 5% hit chance. But anyways, all of that to say, that's how I handle them. We just haven't run into them in the TOTS game so far. But let's move on down. Bookworm! You've mentioned a couple of your influences before, like Matt Mercer. Aside from those already mentioned, what are some of your other influences? Not just as a DM, but in terms of design, writing, narrative, storytelling, tropes, and media. Oh man, where do I start? I have to give, again, just incredible amounts of credit to Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, and Dale Kingsmill. I've linked to Dale Kingsmill's videos and prior lab videos. Please go check all of those people out if you haven't. They are phenomenal tools to teach you how to start running a game. All of their tips are meant for like a more traditional D&D setting, but I've used almost everything they've taught me for the TOTS. It's been very, very fun. But their channels have been really, really good tools to become a better designer and writer, because Matt Colville will break down why the game is designed the way that it is, because he was a game designer. So you take those tips and you put it into your own kind of theory crafting, and it gives you a framework to work within, because we do a lot of design in a vacuum for the TOTS campaign. Obviously, I mean, we haven't tested any of the TOTS Pokemon once they catch them. They are doing the testing for me. So if anything doesn't work, it just gets changed. And I like for the players to have just as much, if not more, influence on how their team grows and adapts and changes if something's not working, or if they know the kind of route they want their team to go. So I use the players a lot, but I get inspired a ton by music. Music is everything when I'm designing any kind of setting. And you kind of have to be in the mood to design stuff. But music is huge. Probably at the end of the campaign, I might be able to talk about a couple of like story arcs that got inspired by albums or songs or soundtracks or something like that. But I don't want to give anything away, just in case anybody kind of knows exactly what I'm talking about. It might end up being like a massive spoiler. But I will, I'll elaborate a little bit more though. The system for legendaries and mythicals, because I know that's kind of caught a couple people off guard. That comes from Final Fantasy XIV. That is the inspiration for that. I have changed it substantially, because if you know how they work in Final Fantasy XIV, when you summon a Primal, it's like it's a bad thing. But there's beast tribes in that game, and they put all of their heart and soul and a bunch of magic and crystals out, and they summon an embodiment of their god, and it has the abilities that they pray for it to have. So that's where I got the legendaries and mythical ideas from, because I've gone on ad nauseum in videos and sessions and streams and stuff about how I don't like the idea that like a 10-year-old could catch the embodiment of space-time and shove it in a PC. Because then what happens to space-time? It's kind of a problem. But our whole group and my family unit especially is hugely into movies. So there's a lot of moments that have been directly and indirectly inspired by or just grafted from movies throughout the campaign. But music, movies, games, TV shows, all that kind of stuff. All your typical pop culture things. But it's a little tricky for the tots because I'm trying not to use anything so overtly obvious. Like, I would love for the desert around Xantha to just have, like, big ol' sandworms, because I love Dune, but can't do just that, so we haven't done things like that, but I love just everything pop culture, and I love fitting in the things that inspire me into the game. Those are the most fun sessions to prep, is if I know, okay, I want to introduce my players to this idea from this other media that I'm a big fan of, and just kind of trick them into experiencing it. So that's a little bit of that, but honestly, there's too many to name. There's so many things. But hopefully that answers your question. Jared Balote. I am also very curious about how many plot points, like in the very beginning with the berry farm and collars, have the tots by choice or sheer dumb luck just pass by without interaction, and are there any that you were particularly disappointed didn't see action? Oh boy. I won't discuss which ones they skipped or what may have been involved, but my word, there are probably a few dozen by now. But that's just D&D. You just have to accept that not every bit of bait is gonna get a bite. So it's a little bit of a bummer, but you just, those plot lines keep going. We've talked a little bit about the Dominus. The Dominus didn't get interacted with at all, really, and is still a thing. It's still being developed and it's still being used. So I don't know if we'll run into it again, but my take on D&D plot hooks is somewhere between, well, if they didn't interact with it here, maybe I'll try it again later, or if they didn't interact with it here, they probably don't care. So if it's something I put a ton of work into, I might try to seed it again later on, but have it be different to show that some time has passed, or we might just never run into it again. Because I'm trying to tell the story that the tots are interested in. And if they don't care about it, then I'm not going to force them to play in it. Moving on down. Jordan Mikesell. I am also very curious to see more Megas Primal origin forms, similar to Primal Octillery many sessions back. Is that a mechanic you've given any more thought to, or are the tots too young and inexperienced to handle that mechanic? So, here's another thing similar to legendaries and mythicals. Some of you will know my stance on, and some of you this might come as a shock. I hated the Megas. I did not like them. I didn't like the Z moves. Anything that takes the nuance out of a fight, like Dynamax. Anything that takes the sort of rudimentary chess game of Pokemon and turns it into like, well, I hit the win button first, so you lose. I didn't like. But Primal in the TOTS game simply means something different. So Primal Octillery would be a good example. Primal Octillery has been exposed to one or more Source Stones. Primal Octillery may have been sort of an infamous wild Pokemon that made its way to Hillmouth just to get away from, people looking to capture it, which is kind of what a lot of Hillmouth is. Hillmouth catches a lot of the runaway, very powerful Pokemon that are tired of running from trainers because they're tired of fighting for someone. They want to fight for themselves to stay strong and stay powerful. So that's where things like Primal Octillery hang out. I've put a ton of thought into that kind of stuff, but I don't think, in the sense that you're asking, I don't think we'll see Megas or Origin forms. We have briefly seen some Mega evolutions through the campaign. I won't go into those because I think it might be kind of fun for you guys to think back on where you may have seen them. But altered forms and regional forms are where I get my kicks. Taking something that already exists and making it different, or taking something that you're expecting to see, like Skarmory, and giving you a baby version of it. Which I don't know if it's come up in sessions, but that is my answer when folks have asked, like, would you ever create your own Pokemon? We have. Titania is a new species. So pretty simple, but you know, we've done a couple little things here and there. But yes, we'll probably see some more Primal forms. I don't think the Tots are too young or inexperienced at this point to handle that. They've bumped into all manner of crazy stuff. I think they can handle anything we threw at them. But let's move on down. You guys have some questions about ghosts. Jamel Commodore and Blaze Blade XD and a couple others of you have asked some variation on, if ghosts are only made by tombstones, how the heck did Gleek make Desmond? The Burial Danceroo is probably one of the Tots' greatest mysteries, so I'm not going to ruin the magic there, and maybe someday they'll figure it out. But what I need you guys to understand is Gleek didn't make Desmond. But we'll move on from there. Logan S. Silly question. If you could give the campaign a name, like Emerald or Platinum, what would it be? I think Pokemon Source or Architect would be perfect. So Architect would be great for like the War of the Architects game that I really want to run, and we'll probably end up doing somewhere down the line. Whether or not that ends up on camera or not, we'll find out. But I've put a lot of work into that setting, and we have some characters lined up for it, so we'll probably try to get that filmed someday. Source would probably be the best one for the Tots game. We tried to brand them pretty early of like, okay, yeah, like, what's your team name? And they just wouldn't come up with it. So me being me, I just started calling them Tater Tots, trying to motivate them to do it, and it stuck. So, you know, they tried to be like the key bearers for a while. They tried to be a couple other things, but yeah, I think at this point they're in so deep, they're just the Tots forever. So it would be like Pokemon Potato or something. Which is just so unsatisfying, but that's probably what they're stuck with. And we're gonna finish off with Fire of Hades. You've got two quick questions. Does Dial-Up still have that really crazy We Have Its Feet thing, or was that a combo with Pontiki? So I'd have to go back and rewatch, but if memory serves, Dial-Up did a like natural 20 electric damage move, and Pontiki was within 30 feet. We have since changed both of those wordings on the abilities, so Pontiki doesn't have to do that. But yes, Dial-Up does still have the same moveset, but Pontiki's ability has changed to where she does not have to steal someone's thunder, literally, and pun intended. But yes, he does still have that move. It was Sonic Boom, I think, and it works very, very differently now. Sonic Boom used to do thunder damage, now it does force. And Sonic Boom used to deal damage equal to the amount of hit dice a creature had. And after the We Have Its Feet thing, I talked with Ben about it, and we reined it in so it now automatically hits for much less damage, but you can only hit a creature with it once per combat. So that's why you don't see it as much anymore. But that's an example of designing on the fly, where it was so complicated for me to remember, oh boy, like how many hit dice did I roll for this thing? Because sometimes you just set something at like 200 hit points and you move on with your life. But then you have to rework it and be like, oh man, okay, go ahead and roll like 15 d20, I guess is probably what this would be. And that was when I realized, okay, this isn't gonna work because in boss fights it's gonna be insane. So yes and no. They still have those abilities, but they work very differently now. And also, how insanely scary is Nipsey now? We haven't really had a chance to play around with the new and improved Nipsey, but Nipsey's bloodlust and hunger has kind of sated, but they are still very spooky. They're very hungry still, but it's not the sort of wild and crazed small crab. Now it's the slightly more subdued and, you know, more subtly demonic crab. But we'll get into that when we get back at the table. And I'll address, there's a couple of you have asked similar variations on will we be seeing things other than these lab videos, these Q&As in the hiatus. And I touched on it a little bit when we talked about the would you ever run another Ragnarok style game. The intent was very much so to run the War of the Architects game in this hiatus to kind of fill that gap and buy a little more time. But without getting too much into personal reasons for the folks involved, I do like to respect privacy. The house that we film in, where the studio is the house where the two people that need the hiatus live. So it didn't feel right for us to just kind of barge in, kick the door down and say, hey, I know that you guys are super busy and exhausted, but can we come film for like 6 months? So you probably won't see any like core D&D content until we're back up and running at full speed, because by the time we could film something like that, the 2 involved folks would probably be ready to go. And at that point, we'd rather play the TOTS game, because that's the game that we like to play. But hopefully that has answered most, if not all, of your questions. Again, please feel free to keep dropping those questions in the comment sections below. I will be happy to continue making these as long as there are enough questions to do so. I might open the floodgates a little bit and say if there's like an NPC you want a slightly deeper dive on, we can do stuff like that. Those might make for some fun videos. So yeah, feel free to drop any kind of NPCs that you want to see more of. There's also been a few questions of will we bring back the like make a Pokemon at the end of the video. I know I didn't do that for this one, but absolutely. I know there was somebody who asked if we would do the Greninja line first, so I'll do a little bit of legwork for the next video, and we'll do that towards the end. So yeah, feel free to drop off a couple more that you want to see, some NPCs for deep dives, and I'll try to help where I can. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Thank you so much for your questions, and thank you for your patience as we wait to get back into the TOTS game. But I will see you next Monday for another lab video. Bye-bye!